Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
Well, Mike, you knew today was coming, buddy. Judgment Day for you. All right, man.
So what would happen? What would happen if you had $1 million tournament with a $250,000 top prize, and it was the second story today?
How sick is that? You know what really like I was thinking about over the last like maybe 16 hours or so is just how pool players can just completely shit where they eat. You know what I mean? Like I've seen like one guy. I'll take that back. Maybe like a handful of guys thank the Saudi Billiard Federation, and it's just like if I were them, I'm making sure that I'm giving them so much love over the last 24 hours, and these idiot pool players can't even get out of their own goddamn way, Mike. I mean, it's it's kind of sad, but then it's funny, and then it's just you know what I mean. It's a little cringy at the same time. So I don't really know, Mike. I don't know. How you doing, buddy? You doing all right?
Everything's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I mean,
exciting event.
Yeah. I mean, look, I guess we might as well start off with what you started off the show with, and that's the first story of the day, I guess. And I don't know how you woke up this morning, but I got up at about 5 a.m. this morning, and I'm still been like on World Championship time, and so I got up at 5 and just picked up my phone, opened it up like I usually do, just kind of see what's fresh on the feed, and then boom, you know what I mean? And there it was on Facebook, and I'm sure you saw it this morning, and I just want to get your reaction to, I guess in general, maybe the wax situation, and then Chua's response this morning to it, Mike.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this the other day, and I said, at the time, I don't really care about who's been accused of waxing, who hasn't been accused of waxing, who has a wax mustache, who has whatever. It doesn't, it's like, let's how do we address this going forward? That's all I think is interesting. Yeah. How do we address this going forward? The who shot John part, I don't really care about, because no one's going to be able to prove anything on anybody. And listen, I love Johan Chua. As a player, I think he's a great guy to hang with, talk to. I like him a lot. But, my lawyers are on it stuff, park that part. It just, you got to be bigger than that. And he knows that he's going to get 960,000 responses of, yes, Idol, I'm 100% behind you from all the Filipino fans, which is great. I mean, no one's more rabidly behind their players than the Filipinos. Right. Nobody. And I love that about them. But, don't get yourself too caught up in it either if you're Chua or one of the players, because it's lemmings. So it's that part of it, I thought that was not a great look or move for Chua. One, the idea of a lawsuit is as baseless as the arguments that certain players for sure did it based on a video. Who knows? It just, you're just compounding the problem. So, that part of if I think that, do I think that there's an issue there? Yeah, it probably is. In these open events, the big Matchroom majors, maybe still. But, the idea then is if you're the players, go to Matchroom and say, listen, this isn't about calling out a particular player. This is about an issue that we think is a problem. Let's find a way to address it in these events. I don't know how you do it. Whether you protect the balls, you don't let anybody touch them, whatever. The only person who can pick up the cue ball is the referee, whatever the case is. You find some kind of middle ground that eliminate. I'm not saying they need to like wax check everyone's glove when they walk up to a table, but they should be able to find something to put people's minds at ease that this isn't a rampant problem. So, so as far as who's calling out who, that whole part of it is just I'm not even interested in that part of it at all.
Well, you mentioned like the Filipino fans, and God bless them, man. They're great. They want to. They got a lot of passion, and it's interesting to me, like
Yeah,
that, like the short sightedness of some of these players, where like they don't even realize that for majority of the world they're just irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Like they're not mainstream sport. No one feels passionate about them one way or the other. Diehards do, you know what I mean? Guys like me and you do, and who are just pool nuts. But it's like you finally have this group of people who really thoroughly celebrate the sport, celebrate champions. It's making news all over. I'm seeing like all these Facebook pages regarding like Filipino news, and they got millions and millions of followers and news stations and all these things, and I'm just like, man, that's so great. And then it becomes an afterthought on the day's stories because of like amongst pool fans because of everything that's going on, and it's just like, man, for the most part, nobody gives a shit about pool players, and so you finally have this fan base that really feels passionately about them, and then you go and publicly call out one of, if not at least the top five biggest stars in the community, and then you have all these Europeans who just jump on the bandwagon of it. I think it's just real short-sighted, and like you, Mike, I liked you a lot, and but like I've mentioned a few times, doing the show, I think to some extent, anytime you see smoke, most time there's going to be fire. But like if you can't pin something on someone, then you have to go about it the right way. And we've seen over the last, at least the last year, year and a half maybe, pool players don't necessarily know how to handle themselves on social media. Like it's a brand new world, and the way that they can kind of shoot themselves in the foot at times, more often than not, becomes a little cringy and a little awkward, and then it just becomes a little like, oh man, I don't think you realize, like in the bigger picture of things, what's going to be affected by it. Um, I
yeah,
thought waking up this morning and seeing his post, look, while I can appreciate someone standing up for themselves and what they believe in, my fear for an already like limited prize fund like pool world, it's just like I don't want to see someone going and spending money on lawyers and things like that, where what are you going to gain from it, and how much time and energy is going to be wasted by it, and all those kinds of things. That's where my head goes to it, and so um, I thought out of everyone, I thought Fedor's response was probably the best for me, Mike, in terms of what he said online. Just as far as not calling anyone out, but just saying about the overall bigger picture of the issue. And we've all heard it for years, like the convenience
yeah,
of when this is coming out is just a little like I feel like that part got ignored as well throughout all this. Not that it necessarily matters, but just like convenient how that part doesn't necessarily get picked up. And so yeah, it was a real like interesting morning this morning, seeing all that stuff, and it's just like it was just, this is the second year of $1 million tournament, Mike. The second year, and all anybody can talk about is the waxing shit all over the internet regarding pool.
yeah. No, it's too bad. And hopefully this, you would hope it kind of goes away, but what it did was it's going to make the Florida tournament really interesting.
Well, what
I mean, that's
what was interesting to me, Mike, in regards to that, and really for the rest of the year now, is who all was mentioned in that post, or who or what was at least implied in that post, because we were out there in Manila last year, and there was a lot of pride amongst those five guys. Efren was taking a nap, but everyone else kind of seemed like they were fighting for each other. And so, but
yeah,
it seems like there are some really, I don't even want to say hurt feelings. Like there's some really pissed off feelings in that mix there. And I think that some of those
Yeah.
players, just given the history of it, may end up, given the history of how Matchroom handles things, right, whether directly or indirectly, they may end up regretting some of the choices they made over the last couple of days. Mike, is just my thoughts on it, and I'm not gonna call out.
Well, wait.
Well, I mean, look, we saw what happened to Josh last year, and so I like, you can figure out a way to justify it if you're Matchroom, and they did, you know. But there was just certain things where it's just like, you don't shit where you eat, and certain players.
Right,
And look, if a guy like Josh isn't above getting made an example out of, and he's box office, right? On their biggest dance floor, the Mosconi Cup, right? He's the heel. He's the heel's heel, and to leave
right.
him out of the mix. Listen, I don't think anybody else would put asses in the seats like a kid like that would, you know. And so, could they figure out a way to spin that, and say, hey, listen, we ain't gotta have X, Y, and Z player involved, for the sake of not wanting to have the drama that's going to come along with it, because what's going to happen, Mike. We saw it in.
Matchroom loves drama. Matchroom loves drama as long as it's not about, with Josh. It wasn't drama. It was Josh, in Matchroom fighting each
Yeah.
other. Matchroom's not fighting. This fight between players and fans right now, which Matchroom eats that stuff up.
Okay, but let me ask you this, because we were there last
So-
year during the press
so-
conference. You think they're going to want to have wax in the relationship between this player and that player be brought up during all that? Because it's going to be talked about all over social media.
You mean if Chua's on Reyes, if Chua's on Team Asia and Kachi's on Team Rest of the World?
No, I'm talking about amongst that same Asian team. With the way that I feel like he's feeling towards some of those teammates from last year. I think there's some real pissed off people there in that team, Mike.
Within the team.
Yeah. And so that'll be the talking point. Now, look, Kachi, great player. We've seen him before kind of be the odd man left out, and I wouldn't put it past him. If he doesn't make it in on points now, I wouldn't put it past him not making that team. Despite, like, you can figure if little brother makes it, you would say, oh, well, you got to have big brother in there to make him feel comfortable and all these things. Just like what we said about Fran and David the first time whenever FSR made the team, But now, after seeing some of the stuff online, Mike, they don't like those things casting any kind of shadows over their events.
Well, I'd be more, if I was Kachi, I don't think I want to go into Manila right now.
How many of these guys do you think are going to stay out of the Philippines Open, Mike? The ones who are like going on there online and like whether directly or indirectly calling people out. just speculation.
Well, listen, there's another event going on at the same time that they can always duck out to if they want to.
Well, I think the registration is about to be open for said event, and you might see some of those names pop up on there. Conveniently, Mike.
Qatar's starting to look really juicy to a lot of people.
Besides the money, yeah. No, I mean, look, it's just crazy to me, and look, pool players are mercenaries in general, so I wouldn't be surprised if they would have followed that money anyway. And I understand why a lot of them would, because of the upside that comes along with it. Plus the idea of trying to fade a bunch of monster Filipinos or unknown Filipinos that you just don't, have any clue about their speed or how they play or whatever. And then you throw in this dynamic as far as suspicion and everything else that's going to be lingering. And not to mention the fact that, like, look, man, you mentioned it, the passion these fans show. Sometimes, like, there's some stuff online where I'm just like, man, they do not hold back any. You know what I'm saying? And so and we saw it last year during Hanoi. I remember hearing last year where I heard this player's afraid to show up because of his safety and because of this and because of that. Like, people, and maybe it's just Americans in general, but like, you forget like how cheap life can be when you're in a country like ours, But like, when you step outside of it, like, You know what I'm saying, Mike? And I'm not trying to like imply anything, but I'm just saying like people can get real passionate and desperate, and you just never know. And I don't want it to go down that road. But like seeing some of the stuff that I've seen online, whether in forums or on posts or whatever, like
You know, people are just. I mean, it's just this type of stuff brings out the worst people we got.
Where else do you see this kind of like passion though, Mike, in our sport though?
Yeah.
Because like you see it across everywhere else. You see it in baseball, you see it in football, you see it in basketball, you see it in soccer, you see it everywhere. Like in terms of social media and every other sport, especially every other like major sport that people give a shit about. You know, but we never see that in pool ever, except with these fans. You know, and look, I love their passion. They didn't necessarily translate into ticket sales last year, but I would imagine that it would have this year, and probably still will in terms of the Philippine Open and the Reyes Cup. You know, but like no, that's what some of these guys don't realize, that like everywhere else in the world, most fans aren't giving a shit about what you're doing. You know, and the one group where like they actually feel like, you know, yes about. It's just it blows me away, Mike, to be honest with you. Like it's surprising, but then it's not surprising. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, I don't really know like where else transition. I hope that it kind of like dies down, but I don't think it will, just because it seems like some players have just kind of like dug their heels in, you know, and they've made they put their name behind it. Others haven't, but some have, you know, and those who have, I think, are passionate about it and are going to keep on sticking to their guns in terms of wanting to whether call people out or see some kind of resolution first before they back off or whatever. And I'm curious to see like how Matchroom's going to handle this, because now you got the guys on their biggest stages that are all talking about it. Fedor brought it up in his social media. Their poster boy and Jason brings it up on posts. You see Kachi, who was in the Mosconi Cup. You know, I've seen at least 3 Reyes Cup players that have brought it up. You know, like it's their biggest event, their biggest events, I should say, outside of the World Championships, and their biggest players are coming out and saying things publicly about it. I don't think you can like look the other way here if you're Matchroom like this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Just, you know, I don't know how vocal Matchroom is going to be about it. You know, so, you know, if they wanted to stay ahead of it, they could work on, you know, okay, here's how we're going to keep this from becoming a topic of discussion at any more of our events that have $1 million sponsors. Okay, that's one thing they might want to look to protect. So, so yeah, I think that it would be smart to do that going forward, and just try to put the discussion in the rearview mirror, because it's not.
Yeah, but what
anymore, right?
Given the history, what leads you to think that that's going to happen?
Well, like I said, you know, if you're talking about how, you know, they've got this $1 million sponsor partner that they've got, and everybody's talking about wax and hating on each other, you don't want to see that continue. If you're natural.
No.
I mean, you know, you want to see the focus stay on your events and on your sponsors and how thankful they are to be there, instead of how much the guy that they're playing cheats. You know, that's what you want the focus to be on. You know, it's all a branding and marketing thing, right? So to be talked about, that's drawing attention away from what you're doing.
How soon before like Predator comes out with like a ball grabber? You know what I mean? Like branded with the Predator logo to grab the cue ball.
Well, they went back to magnetic cue balls. Then you can just pick it up with the magnet and put it into place.
There you go. Yeah, okay, I like it. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, because you know someone's gonna figure out a way to make a couple of bucks off of this. It's always the case in the pool world, Mike. You know, and it's got to be compact enough to fit in a case as well. Just keep that in mind. So
I like Michael Feliciano's post about his hair product.
Yeah, let me tell you, some of those posts.
You're going to see everybody coming in there now with waxed mustaches and their hair's all like
just curled up, right?
Pomaded back. It's going to Oh,
Look, let me tell you, for a guy who does this quite a bit, Mike, like I fidget a lot. Like I fidget quite a bit where I'm just like doing this number here. You know what I mean? And it's not obviously it's not for anything like that because I'm not a pool player, but like you never know what's gonna be misinterpreted now. And now it's just gonna be such low hanging fruit to
That's why you do stuff to eliminate that from discussion, right?
yeah.
You know, they do that in baseball now. I mean, you know, no one said they didn't have to get to a point where this guy got caught cheating by having a foreign substance in his glove or in his hat. You know, they got ahead of it. They just said, you know what? Between every inning, the pitcher's got to stop before he goes in the dugout. The umpire is going to check his glove and his hat. You know, boom, done. Not a discussion anymore. Things like that. It's not that hard.
You know what I'd be afraid of, like given and it's really going to be interesting to see how they respond to it or how they handle this going forward. Because look, we've seen and we still see the restroom break be used as a tool to break the edge or break momentum, or you know what I mean. And so like if that's available, right? If a guy is going in there and starting to hit you with 5, and even if he's on the level. Even if everything's completely kosher, I might say, hey, you know what? I don't think that cue ball is playing kind of right. Ref, can I get, because and then what are you going to do? You're going to say, no, I'm not going to look at it. No, you're going to have, after everything that's happened, you're going to have to address it in the moment, right? So it's like, it can really become, look, pool players have never been short in terms of figuring out a way to play within the confines and the rules to garner some kind of edge, Mike. You know what I'm saying? And so,
during the championship match, doesn't the WADA guy doesn't the drug guy go with the player to the bathroom?
Oh yeah. What is it, like top 4 guys get tested or something?
So
yeah.
So no, it's just there's we're just throwing out goofy stuff, but it's something that it would behoove them to look into. Just in terms of how to eliminate the discussion going forward. That's all.
Well, I can tell you, you ain't gonna eliminate the discussion. You can limit opportunities going forward. But as of right now, it's very much alive, and it's very much going to be on the minds of everyone, at least online. Even though like them or their pundits may not discuss it publicly, it's like everywhere you're going to look, at least for the next few months, throughout the Reyes Cup, is what you're going to be seeing fans that are curious about. And I hope they do get in front of it. Now, it's not like what they've done in the past at certain points. We saw it this past week in terms of the WNT TV situation, which ended up being very good, by the way. But at the beginning of the week, all those issues, you know what I mean? And that's just like what comes to mind recent, anyhow, here we are like 24 minutes now into the show, and we haven't even brought up like what a great final or semifinals that we've had. So I think we'll shelve it for now, Mike. You agree with that? And then we can talk some pool for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right, Mike. Let's talk about some of the semifinalists first before we get into Fedor and Carlo, because they absolutely stole the show yesterday. Bernie. Let's start with my man Bernie, the guy I picked, Mike. I picked him. And I even said in our thing, I said I wanted to pick Carlo, but I don't like me. I don't like picking the obvious. You know what I'm saying? I want to like go out on a limb a little bit. So I said I don't want to pick Carlo. I'm picking Bernie. What do you think this kid's ceiling's at, and how good do you think that he really will end up being, Mike?
Well, we've seen these guys come up and they just look like there is no ceiling. I mean, they can get as good as they want. We saw it a couple of years ago with Raga. We see it with Bernie. There's you see it with a couple other players that you've seen come in there, AJ Manis, guys like that. Cledio, who we'll talk about too. These guys, it's they've got the talent, they've got the nerve. They hold up under pressure. Bernie I was really impressed with. Cledio didn't. I was impressed with him, and he's super young, but you almost kind of expect it because you've seen little bits and pieces of him in the past where you're like, this guy is just a cool customer. He's got the skills, obviously, from his snooker background. And
you mean Cledio?
he's. Yeah. So you can see that come up. Bernie's a little more of that. You saw this young kid like pop up, and everybody's been talking about him in the Philippines, and you see him, and you're like, yeah, he's got game. And then this year, it was a whole different level. It was a whole different level. He's a great young player. So, he had a chance.
I love the way the kid carries himself. First of all, he's got, you can tell he's got like that championship spirit in him, but he's also very humble and quiet. And ironically enough, kind of similar to how Carlo is. Because outside of him jumping on a pool table when he wins a major, like if he's in a crowd, you ain't gonna notice the dude. Like he's just he's not over the top. He's always usually with family of some kind, no matter what event you're going to, whether it's wife or whatever. One of the best parts that I loved, and being a dad last year at the Reyes Cup, was just seeing his kids there every day. Go out there and cheer dad on. And I thought, like, to me, those are like some of the coolest parts of seeing pool become more mainstream, and especially like his kids being at the age that they're at, because they'll remember dad winning a world championship. They'll tell that story to their kids and things like that, which is awesome.
The one thing I did wonder about when I saw Bernie, reach the semifinal and it was going to be against Carlo, I wondered, I wanted to watch it as closely as I could to see if it looked like there was any, hero worship going on there, where Bernie wasn't going to be as intense and dialed in because he's playing an idol and he's playing someone who's like Carlo. But I thought he looked like he was fighting.
I think like you've seen that transition throughout like multiple generations of pool, and I remember seeing it. And what comes to mind, ironically enough, is like Chua, because I can remember whenever he's playing big semifinals and coming up short against the likes of like a Copini, and him talking after the fact about what he meant to his career. And of course, other Filipino players as well, but like kind of see him transition from like, man, I can't believe I'm here with this guy, versus like, okay, I belong here with this guy. You know what I mean? And that's where he's at right now in terms of his game. Bernie's still very young, but you can tell like he's got that like, Filipino style to him, which I just love, and him being in that team of Marboys, I especially love, because you get taught character in there. You know what I mean? Like that's a priority for those guys, which in other groups it may not be. And look, while I can appreciate like the talent that AJ is, I kind of get a little like bitter taste in my mouth just seeing that kid celebrated more than a kid like Bernie, because it's just like Bernie's already accomplished more, and I know it's not, he ain't won a major right now, but like celebrate him because of the way that he's carrying himself and his success on the table versus what someone's Facebook following is like. Like I saw that picture with Efren and Carlo and AJ, and I'm just like, man, to me, it just comes like, while I get what they're trying to do, if I'm one of these young Filipino players, I'm taking that like as a little chip on my shoulder and a little disrespectfully, because just like, the kid's got a great following, but that like he hasn't done shit yet, and you still got to go out there and get wins, Mike, and Bernie was in a semifinal. I would love to have seen Bernie in that photo, given the run that he had, if the world championship is going to mean more than what your following count is like, But look, I like the way he plays. Like I said, I think the kid's got a ton of upside. I can't wait to see him kind of like come into his own. And I want to see him on more bigger stages, because
that's the thing. That's the thing with a lot of these young guys like that, particularly the Filipinos, because there were so many of them here, is, are we going to see them at 5 or 6 WNT/WPA/Predator big events a year? Then you'll get to see, where they're really going to go, as opposed to a flash and then you don't see them for another 2 years. A Muhammad Sufi, even like a Raga, he just kind of, not that he didn't play well, we didn't see him again.
We haven't seen him really since like that final that he made or whatever it was, in the Spanish Open or UK Open, whatever it was.
And so you want to see these guys out there more.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you can only tell, like, even when you follow, um, even when you follow like the Asian tournaments, there's like this whole group of Filipino players that are just incredibly talented and have a great skill set, and they can snap off a major, and like they can snap off a deep tournament in their own right. And so as they get more opportunities and you get this influx of money from bigger tournaments that they're attending, like what happened this year, right, for the World Championships, them taking that money back to the Philippines, and who knows what it can do to go and spark plug and get more. What the Philippines Open will do, and hopefully that'll grow in terms of that event. Like, imagine the guys, and you hear it all the time from whether it's European players or American players or Filipino players, just the amount of like untapped talent that's in that area. You know what I mean? That like nobody's
Yeah, right.
ever heard about yet, except for those guys who are there and in the know. And so um, I can't wait to see what comes of it. I like celebrating like these young champions and these young guys who just carry themselves really well and who just play like fucking lights out. You know what I mean? And on that note, I want to transition over to the other semifinalist in Cledio, Mike. I know you brought him up a little bit ago. Give me your thoughts on the way that kid played.
He just, he's just solid and steady and unflappable. And, I'm sure he was nervous, and there were some, he made a couple of mistakes that were, you know, obviously in the moment type of mistakes. But I mean, Jesus, how old is he? Is he 20 yet? He's going to be a beast to deal with if he sticks with it and really keeps working at it. Our knock on Eklund has always been that he kind of puts in his time when he needs to put in his time, and that's kind of not that's about it. So is Cledio cut from that same cloth, or is he more of a driver? Uh, so we'll see, but he certainly got the talent and the demeanor and the skill set for sure. He's a shot maker.
I think he's very underrated in like everything. I'm real high on that kid. I was going into the tournament. I'm even more now leaving the tournament. I like how cold and ruthless he plays, but he doesn't make like he besides like a little bit of shot clock issue, he really didn't make any like emotional like decisions. You know what I mean? I think he's incredibly steady. You can just see like the raw talent that he is, and once he gets his break dialed in, like after the break, the kid just he gets to where he needs to be at. I like how quiet he is. I like how he's just I don't want to say unassuming, but just like he's just there to handle his business, and that's it. And so um, I love the fact that like while I think that this tournament and how weighted it can be in terms of prize funds can be a little bit anticlimactic in some regards, as far as the season goes, I kind of like that it can springboard an opportunity for a young man like this because now where he's at 6 months into the season, he's sitting in a pretty good spot to possibly end up with a top three spot for a Reyes Cup or for a Mosconi Cup, and so
Yeah, no, he's sitting in a really good spot.
So it's just like, and if it's for these, guys who just have a great run and they're so young and you want to root for them and see more of them, then like you're gonna be looking forward to seeing what the future is gonna hold for him and on the biggest of stages. I think that Federer matchup for me, Mike, I thought he had he left a lot on the table early on in that matchup, and where I thought he could really get 3-4 games ahead, but then one mistake here, one mistake there. You let Federer hang around long enough. Federer's a guy who's going to close on you before the race is done. And that's what happened in that match. Federer's an absolute monster. He's a multiple-time world champion. But I hope that this is like the beginning for this kid in terms of like seeing him in quarterfinals and semifinals. And look, I'm excited to see him at the Florida Open. I'm even more excited to see him at the U.S. Open, Mike, because that to me is here. You know what I'm saying? Right below the World Championship. So,
yeah, especially this year with the increased prize money, that's now you've got a second tournament that can really
Yes.
shake up the whole point of things, right? You win first or secondary, you get 100, you get 50, even third, fourth, 25, you're making a big move. So, otherwise you'd look at this list and say, well, a couple of these guys are already locked in to spots. But the U.S. Open this year is big enough where it can affect, where people land.
Let's talk about the defending champ, Mike. FG Fedor. How ridiculous is this kid?
I mean, to reach the final of this event 2 years in a row is ridiculous. I mean, it really is. With the pressure and with the, more so than in the days of playing in an empty hall in Qatar or UAE. I think this, the setting here, it makes it even tougher. And so for him to get to the final 2 years in a row is just stupid. And the final, he showed what he's made of in the final, because it was not going well for him. You give up 9 games in a row, it's kind of hard to convince
Mike.
yourself that you're going to. Yeah. So, and then to have him fight back to 9-9. I mean, that was just, and then you go on, then the other guy goes on another 4-game run on you, and you come back with 4 of your own. So, it was, that's, he's got a ton. We all know about his talent. We know from last year's final and from this year's final how much heart and drive he has too. So, this is, he's going to go as far as he wants to go.
Look, I couldn't agree with everything that you're saying more, and well, I think like if there's any kind of like knock on him or on the road would have been, maybe it wasn't the toughest of draws per se. And I felt like it was a lot of comfortable areas for him in terms of like European players that he's faced before and he's beaten before, and he knows their game really well. And he certainly has that like Federer factor in some of those guys' heads without mentioning any names, but to go out there and do what he did, number one against Claudio, because Claudio was giving him all that he could handle and then some, especially through like 10 games of that. But then you follow up that with a monster like Carlo, and Carlo is like he's the head of the Philippine team for a reason, and that's because of his resume and his work ethic and all these things, and so it was really something inspiring what that kid did. Never and not to mention the fact that like, oh, by the way, he does so many other great things off the table in terms of being an ambassador and being a professional and being very like, I think at times can maybe wear himself a little thin in terms of everything that he can kind of put on his plate, but he handles it. He handles it, and then he still shows up and comes back from 9-2 down. There was never a point after he gets to like 5. There was never a point where after that where I was just like, oh, Carlos got it, because it felt like, oh shit, Federer's coming. Like Federer's coming, and I've seen this show before, and the same fight that I saw from Carlo when he played against Little Co was the same world championship spirit and fight that I saw from Federer in that match with Carlo. We always mention like guys needing to be a closer and be killers and be ruthless and go out there and take it and not get too emotional. We've seen like big names go and check out, Mike, at a 9-2. I've seen it. I could give you a long list of guys. Federer didn't check out, and Federer gave Carlo all that he could handle. 9-9 from 9-2. Are you kidding me? 13-13. Down 12-9, I think, and then comes back and ties it up again.
13
and breaking, yeah.
I thought
that was it. Yeah,
I thought he was going to run out. Run out the set, and then he broke dry and never got back to the table.
It was brutal, huh?
He did about he came about as close as you can come. I mean, he didn't lose for missing shots in that last 8 racks. So, it was pretty impressive. But Carlo too. I mean, listen, you have a guy, you have a 9-2 lead, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 9-9. That'll test you a little bit too.
Yes.
Right? And then you got 13-9.
Of course, Mike.
He's back to 13-13, and he's breaking, and you got to be sitting in your seat saying, "Well, how did this get away from me?" But Carlo's Carlo too. So, he didn't flinch when he got his chance. He buried it.
That's the thing.
He
Yeah.
made some tricky shots. He got out the way champions get out. He bared down when he had to, and so that's why it was such a good match, because it was the wild swings back and forth, and how each guy was able to handle it and fight back. That's what made it a really good final to me, even though at times it looked lopsided.
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about, it being a heavyweight fight, whether before and there's a lot of times where like before, even though they're marquee names, it doesn't necessarily like live up to the bill, and like you mentioned at 9-2, maybe it didn't necessarily live up to it, but after that, it did. After that, it was like everything and then some, and that's what I like, is to see the exchanges, to see them handle pressure. Carlo did come with some monster routes, some big pressure shots, and Fedor did as well. That Karam from the 2 to the 9 or whatever it was to, I forgot. I mean, late in that match, you know what I mean? That was a ballsy fucking shot there. Carlo coming with that.
Yeah,
Carlo coming with.
It's a
yeah, it is.
shot.
100% it is. Carlo coming with that jump shot, and I'm thinking, man, what he and you can tell like he liked his chances. Like he knew what the fuck he was gonna go and do. And then, by the way, after that, it was no walk in the park thereafter. He still had to come with like another 3 more shots after that amazing jump shot in order to get that victory. And it's just like, it's that champion spirit that you and some guys either just have it and they get it, or will give you everything they got to go and try to get it, and other guys who just have a face, sit there and roll the eyes, drag their shrunk shoulders, you know what I mean, and they got give up in them for one reason or another. I love seeing big matches live up to the hype like the way that did. And outside of like a Ko-Ping Chung Fedor final, like it was Ko-Ping Chung or Fedor, or it was Carlo and Fedor is what the fans wanted to see, depending on what part of the world you were in, and it lived up to it and then some. That semifinals lived up to it and then some. Carlo is an absolute monster. If you didn't have his respect before, you do now. And for that matter, what respect you had for Fedor is even higher than what it was just seeing the way that he put up a fight and the class that he showed after the match and all these things, Mike. It couldn't have been any better for me in terms of that final, from a storyline standpoint, just the way that it made everything else so dramatic, you know what I mean? And now here we are, Carlo's going to be in the Reyes Cup and all these things, you know what I mean? Like all these talking points, seeing him go back home, his family waiting for him, like all that stuff I just love, Mike.
Yeah, no, it was great all the way. And, Carlo, I believe, is now one of only 2 3-time WPA world champions.
One of 2? Okay, so
Right.
So he's got 2 world 9 balls and 1 world 10 ball. So you're talking about on singles, and because the team event that he won a few years ago was a WPA.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So one of
Single.
2, multiple time. I know Ko's got a 9 ball and 10 ball. Shane's got 1 9 ball and 1 8 ball. Who's the other one, Mike? What am I missing here? Who?
Earl won in 90. He won in 90 and 91. He won the first 2 WPA World Championships, and then he won in 2002. He won the 9 ball 3 times, which is what Fedor was trying to do. And then Carlo's got the world 10 ball. Either way, 3 WPA World titles, singles titles. There's only 2 of them.
It's so sick that Fedor got back to that final with, and we always, I don't know if it's just being a victim of the moment, and you can speak to this more than I can, Mike, just because of your history in the game. But it's just like I always think about how deep it is right now in terms of talent and how the gap has closed. And we talked about this many times from the break, and how valuable that shot is weighted. The talent of the Europeans, Filipinos, Asians, whatever, and Federer still got back to another final. Like pretty gross when you think about it, And Carlo being 7 years removed, another final.
Yeah, when it comes to Earl's the only guy who's won it back to back. And there have been a number of players who've gotten there 2 years ago.
Carlo's one of them. Shane's one of them.
Win it back. Carlo's one of them. Albin's
yeah.
one of them. Shane's one of them. And Federer's one, right? It's hard to get back there, and it's hard. Obviously, it's hard to win it twice in a row. And Federer talked about that when I interviewed him on BD Live, a month ago.
Yeah.
He said, "Listen, I'm a math guy. I know the odds are against me going and winning this tournament twice in a row.
Yeah.
But I mean, he came pretty damn close.
About as close as you can ask for, short of a hill. And I thought, look, there's no way you can have back-to-back years going, being that dramatic and being hill, right? Like you can't write this kind of stuff up, But it was all in all, it was a great ending. I love the last day. Actually, I love the last 2 days, especially because there was just some great matches all the way around. There was no shortage of stories, even outside of the bullshit that was going on off the table, and the way that things kind of shifted for storylines going forward for the next 3-4 months when it's about to get really, really intense. It just makes me that much more thirsty for pool, Mike, and seeing how things are going to happen in the next couple tournaments that are going to be super massive in terms of standings. And I want to see what these guys' schedule is going to look like and who's going to go where and who's able to go where. It's just so many different things that come into that.
Yeah, a lot of that, we talked about how you've got Florida and the U.S. Open kind of back to back, and the U.S. Open being a big prize one. So I think once the U.S. Open's done, a lot of guys are going to have a really good idea of where they're at and what their chances are. Because after that, you've got a couple of events. You got Hanoi, you got Philippine Open. You got a couple opportunities to get that $30,000 top prize, right? Or is it 30 or 40? 30.
40.
But it's going to be hard to make huge jumps unless you win one of those events. So at that point, guys might start saying, I know where I'm at. I'm going to skip this one and go to this instead. Or I need to be at this one because I'm only 4,000 away from this spot, whatever. So I think after the U.S. Open, guys will be in a better position to know where their personal, upside is. So that'll be interesting to see. I was looking at the standings going after this event for Reyes Cup, right? So Asia, you're at what? Carlo, Yap, Bernie are the top three right now.
Wait. Say that again. Bernie's in the top three right now? Oh.
Based on 2025? Yeah.
You're talking about individual, for the 1 year, right?
Yeah.
Let me see here.
1 year, I've got Bernie at 51.850.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, he's at 53,950. And Rhoda's at, so it's Carlo, Yap, and Chua are top three, Mike. Carlo's 276, Yap is 118, Chua is 83. In my opinion, those are pretty close to being all but locked up. At least the top two are,
okay.
Because no one's going to make a run on Carlo. They're not going to have a chance to, and I don't think on Yap either. Chua is going to be in, I think no matter what, just given his value to that market, the way he's playing, the way he played last year, everything that he's doing this year on top of that, I think it'd be really, really hard for a Bernie or a Rhoda to make that team. Not that they're not deserving of it, but just from these other things that are going to come into play when it comes to wild cards and things like that, Mike.
Okay.
So
I'm trying to think. I missed them here.
yeah,
This is after. This is after from Hanoi until now, right? After Hanoi.
where are you looking at?
until
Because I'm
now.
looking at the WNT World 9-ball rankings, and they got these tabs that are like Mosconi
Yeah.
Europe, Mosconi USA, and then Reyes Cup. That's 2-year standing, Mike. No,
Reyes
it's not, because
Reyes Cup starts with what event from last year? Does it include Hanoi from last year? Does it?
I know it at least includes the international, because that's where Yap got his big start.
Well, yeah, I know that.
So,
I know that.
yeah. No, but
So
I think it cut off on Hanoi is what I think.
it
Pretty
cut
sure.
off on Hanoi for Mosconi for sure, but didn't it cut
Yeah,
off
yeah, yeah.
earlier than that for Reyes? Did Reyes cut off after the U.S. Open last year? The two on when their cutoff was. Yeah.
Well, we don't even know when they're gonna when's the cutoff for this year.
We don't know that, but we got to know when the things, because that's, I know what their numbers say on there, but I'm trying to figure out what that means in terms of when Reyes Cup rankings start.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess we'll figure that out. We got to do a little bit of actual work here instead of just making asses out of ourselves here online, Mike. At least you do anyway.
Yeah, right.
I'm good with doing that, though.
Well, you're reading off the script, and I never trust that.
Well, I mean, like, look, if there's one thing that I've learned over doing this for the last few years is that, like, there's always a twist. There's always going to be a twist, and I don't think that Team Asia versus the world is the last twist, But there's always something on the back end that just happens to go and come every time towards the end of the year, where they can shake things up. And look, given that double prize money for the U.S. Open, I think it's like $100,000 for first. So you can see,
right, 100,000 for first, 50 for second.
Yeah, so you can see a pretty good leap. And given the way that the Filipinos are playing, these Asian players that are playing, hell, even like a handful of European players, it's like things can really still get turned on its head. Now, I know right now some of these guys are feeling pretty comfortable where they're at, but the drama ain't over with yet. Somebody's gonna make a leap. So, but it's tough to see. Like, let me ask you this, Mike. Is it like, do you think the U.S. Open is just Federer or bust this year, or do you think that like Carlo can make a run at the U.S. Open, or like, and when I mean a run further than Federer?
The thing that I will say, I think that Federer has shown more consistency for events. The one thing with Carlo has always been that, he'll win these huge events and he's a monster player, but there are a number of events where all of a sudden he just, like last year's World Championship, he was 2-0.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bad beat for and we've seen Carlo have those kind of tournaments where I don't think you see that much from, the Federers, the Fillers, the FSRs, the guys like that. We'll see. Yeah. Never know. Never know. I mean, if they get the big field, they should get it. Everybody at the U.S. Open.
Yeah,
they should, because you got a couple of events. You got the Florida Open not too far ahead of it. You've got a couple regional events around it as well. So, and it's a big prize, second biggest prize fund of the year. So I don't see, why it wouldn't have pretty much the same field you had at the World Championship. So
pretty close to it.
Look, yeah. So that'll be and then it's fair game for anybody who's there, because a lot of talent these days.
Yeah, I mean it is for sure, but at the same time, like seeing the consistency, like you mentioned, from Federer, despite the fact that we hadn't seen him in a Matchroom major all year long up until recently, But I think you're gonna have a lot of these same suspects, Mike. Like I saw on Instagram where Carlo's like back to work today, and I'm like, man, what fucking monster that dude is. He's already back hitting balls, and even had time to really celebrate a win. He's already back to the practice room because of the schedule that's going to be coming up. So I would for sure expect him to see a big run. Little Cole, we know what he can do out there. We know what Yap can do out there. We know what a Josh can do out there, what a Fedor can do out there. And, oh, by the way, there's a guy in South Dakota who was in the finals last year, and he knows what it takes to win one of those tournaments as well,
What kind of which Josh you think is going to show up for the U.S. Open?
It was crazy to me when I'm looking over like Wikipedia last night, and I was seeing that Josh's only been in one World 9-ball final, and then I go back and I think about the U.S. Open, and I was there when Josh won his U.S. Open at Mandalay Bay, but he's always going to be a threat. I think he still has the it factor for me. He's still going to be a top 3 betting favorite in that tournament, but it's like when you really start dissecting,
the results haven't been there.
Well, I mean, he's sitting number 2 now for Europe, but it's like
I say you talk about him like he hasn't won in a while, or he hasn't.
Well, he won like the UK Open or whatever, you know what I mean? But like you said, you expect the U.S. Open to be the who's who. Like any and everybody is going to be there because you can make a splash at that event. And given how everything's padded before and after in terms of what value, from a player standpoint, what value you're going to get on your money for coming here to the States during that time is going to be a pretty big reward, So everyone's going to be acclimated. They're going to be comfortable. Yeah. They're going to be, in gear as best that you can. And so, but there's a lot of threats. I mean, I see a comment in here about the Vietnamese. Like, holy shit! The run these guys had, And I know that we thought they could do good, and but they had a great tournament in the World Championships. Mike, you think about, I'll tell you who I do want to see, who I really, really want to see is that guy Amir, because that dude Amir, he looked like he was all that and then some, Mike, in terms of his game. Like he looked like he's got the total package together to be able to.
Any kind of comments afterwards about if we'll see him again soon?
So they had said in the stream that something along the lines of they expect him or he's going to be a full-time WNT pro, something along those lines. So that made me real excited, right? And then the idea of what he could be for making a team comes to mind, right? Because that's a natural conversation all year long. And you mentioned the fact that him being available for Team Asia, but I go through WNT rankings for the Reyes Cup, and he picked up 50,000. His name is nowhere to be found. No, didn't he pick? Was it?
Didn't he get 25?
No, I think it was 50 for. Oh no. Was it 25?
Yeah.
Well, either way,
50 was for 3.
Okay, so then either way, that would still put him within the top 10 currently of Reyes Cup rankings, and he's not on there. So what team is he going to be available for? Is he going to be available for the Asian team? Is he going to be available for the world team? And either way, even if he's not, I still want to see that guy go and play some more. I want to see him at the U.S. Open. I want to see him. Yeah, I want to see him compete as much as possible because he was a great, great, great story, Mike, for me, and just proved a whole hell of a lot. I'm trying to work on getting an interview with him. I don't know if his English is that great, but I'm working on getting the translator as well. But hopefully we can make that happen. But there's a lot of things. I mean, look, we talked about AJ to start the show. He had a couple of good wins in this tournament as well, Mike. And so could he parlay that into capitalizing on that momentum for some real results, real money, and a real run for a big event like the U.S. Open. And look, outside the World Championships, it doesn't get any bigger in terms of a stage for an individual tournament, and so there's just so many things that I'm looking forward to over the next couple of weeks, Mike, for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
What were your other takeaways, Mike? What were some other things that stood out to you for the World Championships? Any things you were happy about or pissed off about or whatever?
Not that I was really disappointed, and I thought, that, like I said, after the glitches got taken care of on WNT TV, I thought
It was
the
great.
coverage was really. It was great watching 4 matches at a time.
Yeah.
I wish we could get, I mean, nitpicking, but I wish we could get, video captures of a table that showed someone all the way up to the top of their head. Um, it's tough watching
Yeah.
tough watching the guy's neck walk around the table, and if unless you know who the shirt is, you don't know who it is until they bend over the table to shoot. But I thought that the coverage was really good. Thought the commentary was really good. Again, I want to see them get more crowds in it. The finals was great. It was loud. It was fun.
There's a lot of Filipinos out there, Mike. That's why.
But they were all like on the periphery, right? Those center court seats in the middle were still, it just doesn't, and up to the final, it was like a morgue in there. So, I want to see them work again, work a little bit harder next year to get some warm bodies in there. Give up your cushy seats for the first couple of days and let people sit there. I don't know. I think the players deserve it. I think it makes for better television, obviously.
It does.
That's one thing I'd love to see addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you achieve it outside of like just continuing to promote it and promote the names and promote the stories and to be fair to the team.
They do on the ground there. That's the thing. I don't know how much.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I'm talking just in terms of like social media in general for the event. Because I thought, look, there was no shortage of like interviews and photos and little like short clips that can go a little viral depending on the moment, and so like I love that they're putting all those pieces in place. But this kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning, Mike, in just terms of like for the most part, look, some of these players. They may think like they're stars as bright as can be, but when it comes to putting asses in the seats, it doesn't necessarily translate, And the Filipinos show out that they do. So I hope there's a way to figure out to get some of those more locals in there, get some more fans in there. It makes me like seeing the World Championships. It makes me even more excited for the Philippine Open because I'm just envisioning like looking up and just seeing like floors of Filipino fans just hanging out in the balcony, just sitting there sweating and cheering and clapping and yelling and all these things, and so and just given like the run that they had, I just hope that more fans turn out. Of course, I hope more fans turn out for the Reyes Cup as well. But I want to see like a more, younger audience. I see like guys mentioning Derby. Derby's great. Fans show up for the finals and, some diehards show up there, at the beginning, but it's a different like type of crowd. You know what I'm saying? And even at the U.S. Open, sometimes they can be like an older crowd. I want to see like young people there, and I want to see it.
Yeah, I want to see the U.S. Open get some crowd this year, but it is kind of that old person's destination stop. Atlantic City. It's not like you're getting a bunch of local high school kids come down here to watch.
Well, I think they did something to bring in some kids from Atlantic City. Maybe it was like a boys and girls club thing that I remember seeing like last year or something. And like, look, it's a great start, and like Rome wasn't built overnight, So while I want to see more fans in there, like, and I want the Philippines to be like Hanoi, because Hanoi was amazing. Hanoi gave me goosebumps from watching from the house and from watching in person. And so I want to see that more for these guys because I do feel like for it will shift the power that's currently held in terms of like strong tournament players because guys who compete better when there's crowds and energy is different than when it is, a little Euro toury, you know what I'm saying? And so, that part I want to see more because I just feel like it can really just bring a whole different level of player. And I want to see more. I want to see more players. I want to see more matches. I want to continue to see 4 tables, all these things, And so, all in all, though, Mike, given the way that the week started, I didn't think that it was going to end the way that it did, but I'm certainly glad that I was able to sweat it and it was just. I thoroughly enjoyed it, Mike. And congratulations to Carlo, because that was just an amazing performance, well deserved, and Fedor as well, along with all the other competitors. So, you got anything else, buddy? Before
So you think? Well, I think that Carlo probably improved his chances for Hall of Fame.
Isn't that this year? He's up, right? This year
he was on last year's ballot, but so was Shane. So
what is the thing? You can only only one player can get in the Hall of Fame. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, then you got.
Well, two can get in the same year, but they both have to be named on 75% of the ballots.
You better get in the Hall of Fame this year, or you're going to hear the wrath from the Filipino fans, Mike. I guarantee you that. Okay, so whatever we got to do, if we got to rig the election, whatever it takes, we got to get Carlo inducted to the Hall of Fame, because it's if he didn't have a resume before, he certainly has it now after that World Championship. So anyhow, Mike, I got to run. I got to go take the girls back home. So thanks a lot, everybody, for hanging out with us. We may do another couple shows before I take off here in a couple of days, but either way, just stay tuned. We have more stuff coming up, and thanks everybody for hanging out with us this morning. We'll see all you guys later.